Hello, hello. It's astrologer Kimberly, your astrologer friend, here with a video about Victoria Beckham. I just watched the documentary. I was a kid when Wannabe was released. Well, yeah, I was a kid. I was like not 12 years old in 1996 when Wannabe was released. And so I have been following Victoria Beckham as a Brit, as a British person. I've been following her throughout her music career, her fashion career, and so on. So I think I'm pretty qualified to talk about Victoria and her birth chart. Also, I am also an Aries and I am also a Cancer rising, just like Victoria. That makes me qualified. Also, I love celebrity and so on and so forth. So let's get into it. Let's have a recce at her birth chart and a good old look at what her birth chart's saying. So I watched the documentary, maybe you've seen it too. And she spoke in the documentary about how she felt very isolated and different. And there are so many fascinating things in her birth chart that we're going to look at now. But first of all, I want to say, as an Aries, when we see Victoria striding through the world with that kind of spiky, edgy determination, that is her Aries side in play. You know, Aries is a very headstrong zodiac sign. It is direct, and Victoria has Mercury in Aries, as well as her sun being in Aries. She also has Mercury there. So she is quite on it, you know, when she's saying these jokes. She's obviously very funny, quick-witted. And so when we're looking at this chart, look at what we see. We have a grand trine in air. Okay. Air is all about logic and discernment. And, you know, this is why she's kind of quick-witted, is because she has this mind that even though she's got Mercury in Aries, she's very like driven by her brain power and her ability to think in that way. She's got her sun in Aries, ruled by Mars at 28 degrees of Gemini, coming into a conjunction with Saturn at 29 degrees of Gemini there. And her moon is in Aquarius at 27. And there we have Uranus at the base of her chart. So we have this grand air trine made up of her solar ruler, Mars, moon in Aquarius, and Uranus there. Uranus is the ruler of her moon. Okay, so this is a powerful air trine, and it also involves her sun, which is directly opposite Uranus. Okay, so let's just go through these one by one. Moon in Aquarius, let's just go for that first. Moon in Aquarius is the same moon sign as Marilyn Monroe, Britney Spears, Princess Diana, and Addison Rae. And I don't think Addison Rae has had any flack from the press, but certainly those other ladies have been hounded by the media, right? Let's just say that. So, like, that's a commonality that's really, really interesting. The fact that she has Moon in Aquarius and she has this very tenuous relationship with the media. She also has a Mercury opposite Pluto here. It's a little bit of a wide opposition, 9-degree Mercury in Aries, opposite that Pluto at 4 degrees of Libra. Again, Mercury opposite Pluto. Pluto being the planet of control and dominance and manipulation, Mercury being reporting, communication, and press. So there being this really big challenge around getting her message out or being heard or being, you know, understood. That's what I might say about those two. Her sun is conjunct Chiron, which is a classic signature of someone who might have been bullied or someone who might have a painful experience around their sense of identity, both of these in Aries. So again, I'm not saying tall poppy syndrome, but like her raising her head up above, you know, her peers or being seen leads to, you know, the counter attack of being, you know, usurped, one might say. And so she says in this documentary, she always felt different. She felt completely ostracized and outside of her peers. So, Moon in Aquarius, I feel different. Sun conjunct Chiron, I was bullied. And then Mars and Saturn, perhaps her solution was to this was going off to the theatre school that she enrolled in, which her parents sacrificed money to send her to. So the 12th house is the house of solitude, confinement, and we might say alienation, right? So the 12th house being this area of unconscious, but also the area where we are secluded and set apart from others. And when there's activity going on in the 12th house, we might be ourselves intuitive. And so she has this 8th house moon, stepping in time in syncopation with the Mars, her solar ruler, and Saturn there in Gemini. It's like a really strong trine, but really lending itself to stuff going on behind the scenes. We so often feel like, well, I don't know about you, I so often felt like I didn't know Victoria, right? Like she had her big sunglasses on, she would be papped, going in and out of cars, or when she was Posh Spice in her earlier years, she was very sleek and, mysterious. And so we're now getting to know her more with these documentaries, the one that's just been released on Netflix about her, but also there was one a couple of years ago about David Beckham, and we're starting to see the more humorous side of Victoria. She consequently, because of the bullying and because of bullying at school as well from her teachers in theatre school, she controlled her weight. And again, control issues come via Pluto, Mercury opposite Pluto being teachers or writers um, producing a struggle and friction. So her experiences with the media and reporters and journalists being Mercury figures, Pluto being that opposition with control issues, and that just being a loaded charge around those figures. So you had the reporters, but also teachers. Mercury can often represent in the chart teachers. And so the teachers were the ones that bullied her and basically said she was fat. And her response to that being control and discipline, and that being a really secret, hidden issue for ages. 12th house, Mars, Saturn. Saturn is the planet of discipline and consistency, and control is more Pluto, but Saturn, we might say, is tightening of, you know, tightening principle. So Mars, Saturn, determination, just this like real force to be reckoned with, but in a very unconscious, private domain. She also has Neptune in the sixth house. Again, I'm interpreting this chart in whole sign. We're using a very basic system of interpretation here, but for the sake of this, this is what I'm doing. Neptune in the sixth house is in Sagittarius in an absolute perfect trine to Neptune. Okay, so here again, we might have the mysterious nature of Victoria Beckham, the glamorous nature of Victoria Beckham, and it being really plugged into the mercurial influence here in the top of her chart. So she is a singer. She is a entrepreneur. She's a businesswoman. All these Aries planets at the top of her chart, and she has Neptune, which is the planet of artistic tendencies, in her sixth house of work. So, very, very nice for somebody working in the music industry. Very, very nice for somebody working on television or in a day job that is artistic and creative. Lovely. And that Neptune also being perhaps a glamorous or inconsistent quality around habitual areas of life, eating. Okay, so there's always a lot of interpretations that we can take from a planet in a house. One in this instance would be working in the arts. Two would be a daily routine that is mystified or confusing. So, not being able to eat in a way that makes sense would be Neptune in the sixth house, or alternatively, working in a industry that calls for creativity and fluidity. Okay. So she's also got North Node in the sixth house as well. So, being a busy person, being somebody who likes to, get their teeth stuck into their job is ideal. The sun is the ruler of the second house, and I find it very interesting how this documentary touches on the painful nature of investments and basically income. She had to ask her husband David for the money to make sure her business was successful. And this Chiron sun and these money issues being very public now, especially with Chiron basically right on her sun right now. So she's had her Chiron return. She's probably come to terms with her financial capabilities. And yeah, this being a really interesting signature in her chart. She is the entrepreneur. She is the Aries go-getter. She headed up her fashion business, but the one thing that she wasn't able to do was manage the finances. Ruler of the second house in the 10th, conjunct Chiron, is how we see that playing out. And then the North Node being so tightly trine to Chiron, and that South Node featuring the Mars Saturn conjunction there too. So, one thing to note is that there is no Earth in this chart. David Beckham is very earthy. He has a moon in Capricorn and he is a Taurus stellium. So David really is the ground beneath her feet, in terms of very basic astrology. Here's a woman who's married a man who's very earthy. So that ticks a box. But I also did some investigation around her business partner, whose name is David Belhassan, and I found his birthday, and he has Mercury, Saturn in Taurus. So there's two Davids. I love it when a name repeats. People who know me well know that I have a lovely little obsession with double meeting people with the same name from different circles, but it coming to present something serendipitous for me. And she has David and David. She has two Davids. Maybe she has more in her life, but both of them are Taurus dominant, and that shows up in her 11th house of friends, right? So that's interesting. Of course, David Beckham has his moon in her seventh house of marriage partnerships as well. So he's, fulfilling more for her than the other David. Anyway, so one of my favorite things to work with, oh, let's talk about Pisces. Okay, so you have this entrepreneurial spirit. She's a firecracker. She's says daring things. She comes out with comments that are really close to the wind, like she says in the documentary. David has a nice cock, which is very brash, very Aries, just saying things without kind of consideration. It's also quite Uranus sun. And so as we get to know Victoria better, people are saying, why isn't she doing comedy? Like she's so funny. And that's that sun Uranus, that kind of sharpness, but also that ability to be very spontaneous and play with people. She has the air in her chart to be able to get this kind of comical reaction. Elsewhere, we have Jupiter, midheaven, Venus in Pisces. So she has an exalted sun in Aries and an exalted Venus in Pisces on her midheaven. There are two areas of the chart that we would attribute to being career areas. One is the midheaven, one is the 10th house. Okay. The midheaven here runs through the ninth house with Venus right on the midheaven. Jupiter is there co-present too. I find it interesting that she moved to LA or Hollywood. She moved abroad to Spain as well. And there we have this very glamorous Pisces midheaven. She is somebody who worked in, a glamorous industry, being a pop star, being a mythic figure, and working in fashion. Venus in Pisces. She also has a makeup brand that she launches. Jupiter is the planet of fame. Venus is the planet of beauty and attraction. So, this really does speak to her career, but also her overseas travel and also her friends who are Pisces as well. We've got Eva Longoria, who's a Pisces, and she shows up in this documentary as somebody who is a cherished friend. They show a scene where Eva comes into Victoria's studio and she gets a big hug, and they seem to be genuine kindred spirits and good friends, and they met in Spain as well. Eva Longoria also has the moon and Venus in Aries. So, and she has the sun and Jupiter in Pisces. So, really, really nice to see the friendship of these two women and how strongly aligned they are with their, personal astrology. Eva Longoria shows up as a Scorpio rising on the internet, but she's also published as being an Aries rising. And I think she might be Aries rising because she's quite like open and friendly, and I feel like a Scorpio rising would be a little bit more shy unless it's a complete mask. So, not sure about her rising sign, but nevertheless, the two women are clearly very nice, good friends. So, let's now look at the annual profections of Victoria Beckham because this is my favorite technique to use when I'm reading your birth chart, when I'm reading your friend's birth chart, when I'm reading a celebrity's birth chart. This is the technique that I like to use. So we already see that Victoria is 26, 27 degrees Aries rising. So in her annual profections, in her perfected chart, she became a Taurus around the age of 3. She then had a new moon in Taurus when she was 5 years old. Okay. Before we pull up the other chart that I've got for you. So, if you don't know what annual profections is, it's this slow emerging of a second birth chart in accordance with the first few months of your life. So, the first year of your life is akin to the first day of your life. Look it up, annual perfections. You're going to love it because I love it. It's so fun. So, her annual perfections, she had a new moon moment just after she was born in Taurus. Now, I think the way that this annual perfection system works is that we're transferring her sun into the 11th house, and she's having a new moon in Taurus in the 11th house of communities, groups, and society, and hopes, dreams, aspirations that are humanitarian and collective. Okay. Victoria was bullied, so it wasn't as if she went to school and really enjoyed the experience of being around her peers as such. She was bullied by her teachers. It was rough going. We got that. She's also Cancer rising, which means that she has a very sensitive disposition, and the moon is her chart ruler, which is, stepping in sync with both Mars and the sun. So there being a lot of charge around her drive to succeed and, harness her experiences and like let them motivate her in a really, really profound way. This new moon would have taken place in her 11th house, and she spoke to her early formative years of being really determined to perform, of her love of music, cabaret, of, being involved in this landscape of the world of the arts, which is so Taurus, right? Like this 11th house being a Taurus area of her horoscope and her new moon in Taurus cementing that really set her in the world of arts, the arts, right? So we consider that from the age of 5, she's a Taurus. We still have the Aries as the original, as the originator, but she becomes Taurus really, really quickly. Depending on where your sun is, you'll become the next sign. So say you're born 5 degrees of Aries, at 25, you would become a Taurus, but she's born really late in the sign. So we get that. So excuse me, she experiences her perfected new moon, full moon. Oh my goodness. I feel like editing that out, but I don't know how to edit. She experiences her full moon in annual perfections just before her, have this written down somewhere, just before her 19th birthday, is it? Let me just double check. Days before her 19th birthday, she experiences the full moon in Scorpio in her 5th house. Okay, so this is the annual perfections chart for, was it her 19th birthday or her 18th birthday? She would have been in 1994. She would have turned, yeah, it would have been before her 19th birthday, right? So let's say, and the 5th house is the fifth house of the things that make life worth living, performance, my talents, my sexuality, my joy, my self-expression. Okay, so at this stage, Victoria has been in the world of community and in the, social realms of stagecraft and the arts and like soaking up experiences among friends, her peers on the stage. But the full moon comes, and perhaps this is a moment for Victoria Beckham where the universe is saying, it's showtime, baby. It's time for you to show off your talents. And not long after this, she auditioned for the Spice Girls, and not long after that, they released Wannabe. If you want to know more about the annual perfections, she was in a this year, when she in her 18th year, she was in a 7th house Capricorn year. Her audition for the Spice Girls came when she was in an 8th house year, and Wannabe was released when she was in an 11th house year. So the single that became so successful saw her with the emphasis back on her community and her friendships. And in the documentary, she talks about how being with the other girls in the band was really the first taste of friendships, formative friendships, that she just had such a good experience around, being with the girls in the band and like having her pals with her. You can also see at this stage, Venus had entered Aries in her annual perfections. So although Jupiter's still around, the success point of her horoscope, Venus is now confident in the top of her chart. And so it's interesting, I would say, that she's finally making her friends with this Venus at the top of her chart, maybe more confident, maybe more self-assured, and so on. Okay, let's just take that back a second. So interesting that was the moment that she was auditioning, was with this kind of like moon in Scorpio in the 5th, encouraging her to perform. And when you see the audition as well, she is wearing like a very black outfit. Of course, she was Posh Spice and so on. Okay, then we had the progressed Venus on natal Mercury. Bear with me one second. Progressed Venus on natal Mercury, finding fashion and independence. Progress Mars over the ascendant for, okay, let's just take this forward a bit. Bear with me. This is where I have to slow down. So we've blasted through the basic natal interpretation, but when it comes to the annual perfections, stuff starts getting complicated. So here we have May 31st, 1998, Jerry left. She had Brooklyn on the 4th of March, 1999, when her progressed Mars went over the ascendant. Okay, so here's another interesting tidbit. about Jerry. So she's got Mars going through Cancer in her chart, which perhaps is why she's like this moody spice. I know she's posh spice, but maybe that's why she was actually like pretty the teenager vibe of the group. Cancer, Mars in Cancer, Saturn in Cancer. If you know, you know. 4th of March, 1999. So 2 years, 1, 2, 1999, 4th of March. This is when she has her first baby. So this is her becoming a mother, 4th of March, 1999. Just look at that position of Mars, guys. Her progressed Mars being the ruler of her sun, so her sun being her identity and her purpose and her ego, now being reborn as a mother. So I think like the fact that, I think the fact that Victoria became mother also in annual perfections, she's 24 years old in this one. She is in a first house year ruled by the moon. And the moon, at this point, when her little baby is born, her first baby, Brooklyn, the troublemaker these days. Let's just double check his chart. Oh, sorry. Her moon was in, her progressed moon is in Capricorn. His moon's in Libra. We'll look at the kids' charts in just a moment. Bear with. Her moon was in Capricorn. So the experience of being a mother, kind of an interesting topic for Victoria. She kind of said she wasn't too worried about becoming a mother. Um, let's not play any guessing games around Victoria's proclivity to be a mum, but let's just say this is a super interesting moment that we can note, which is Mars going over her ascendant. So that was her having Brooklyn. Then she she got married really, really quickly afterwards. That was July 4th. She got married. Then we had the end of the Spice Girls in the year 2000 on November 16th. And this is kind of like a bit of a crisis point for Victoria. So even there, you see her progressed Mercury's gone into Gemini as well. So shifts are taking place when she has the baby and with the dissipation of the girl group. Okay, the end of Spice Girls was November 16th. We can bring that forward just a bit to see. Excuse me, being annoying. I'm excited to be doing this with you all. November 16th. Again, Mars still over the descendant, almost having her lunar return. Let's not worry too much about what was going on about the dissipation. This is all quite like close in terms of dates. The next one that's interesting is she found her fashion and independence with Venus on natal Mercury. That was 12th of May 2000. So it's more this. This is what's really interesting. And I found this date because I was watching the documentary, and this is when she said she was going to like the Versace she was going to the Versace shows and so on. Like she still released the single with Dane Bowers. You're out of your mind. Gonna make this real easy. So who remembers that banger? Not. That was a miss, wasn't it? That song. That was terrible. Victoria singing that one. Her music career didn't take off, let's face it. Like after she, it was not great. solo solo music career. But Aries Mercury, I mean, yes to yes to so many things about Victoria, but like maybe it's the Sun Chiron. I don't know. Did you like Victoria as a solo artist? I don't know. I think there was better things to listen to. Anyway, her Venus on Mercury was her making the executive decision to move into fashion. I mean, look, it took Victoria Beckham a long time to get there. She's released this documentary. Some people have been saying it's a promo. I don't mind. I love celebrity culture. I love being a fly on the wall. I love looking at the astrology of it all. Let's face it, that's why I watch these documentaries. Anything true life, I watch the documentary and then I study the astrology at the same time and find it fascinating. And now I'm sharing it with you guys. Why not? Right? We have YouTube. We have the power to publish. So yeah, she's maybe, I don't know. I'm not going to comment and be a cow and say she's not successful. Clearly, she is incredibly successful. She's an incredibly successful woman. Um, but you know, there are also things that we could say about her, the way that she's, you know, made her mark, that maybe she's not been super duper successful. Anyway, moving forward. She then had a progressed new moon in Gemini. Now I'm going to bring up the image that I found on pretty much on the week of her new moon in Gemini. And this is, I've done a deep dive onto Madonna too, and there's an amazing website called Every Day of Madonna or something. Like it's any day that you want to know what Madonna was doing, you just Google this website and it will tell you like where she was. Some obsessed fan has created this website. And so I was studying whether we think Madonna is a Aquarius rising or a Virgo rising, because there's two contested time of birth for Madonna. Three, because I actually watched a Instagram story where she was with an astrologer and he said she might be Pisces rising, which confirms to me that I think she's Aquarius rising because I think she gave him a time close to Aquarius and he's guessing Pisces. Anyway, it's fun to look at people's astrology when we can tell, you know, what they were doing. And this moment, so it's October 8th, you can see here this new moon in Gemini, technically in the 12th house. Let me just stop my share there and reshare this other window so we can see what the vibe was. Now, remember, this is a Gemini, progressed Gemini new moon. Victoria Beckham, 2008 October. We can tell the date. I mean, this is the most flattering photo of her here with her pixie crop. And it was October 15th in Dusseldorf. She's doing fashiony things. Look at the pixie crop. Look at the pixie crop that she's rocking. I won't stay too much on this window because it's Getty Images, and who knows if I will get into trouble for sharing that. Who knows these days? But anyway, let's go back to the old progress chart. Here we are, her progressed new moon. So we've been through the new moon in Taurus for this prolific woman, which was when she was just a tiny girl. She was experimenting in the world of showmanship and community and being a part of the world of the arts. Then she had her full moon, which was her time to shine and put herself out there. She found her creative hot button and auditioned. Look at me. She had that moment in the spotlight. And then all these years later, she becomes, in 2008 October, a Gemini with a new moon in Gemini. And this is the point where she is building her fashion business. I must also say at this point, we know about David's affair. David had his affair in let's see, it was 2000, September 2003, which I think corresponds with the Mercury going into Gemini, 12th house, secrets, stuff going on behind the scenes. It was April 4th, 2004, that the News of the World published the story about David's affair. And at this point, she's developing a line of jeans. And then Cruz was born on February 20th. So, like, this woman has lived a life. She's got four kids and lots of businesses and lots of business ventures. Like, what a powerhouse, right? What an Aries. I can only hope. I'm not living up to Victoria Beckham, but she inspires me. Let's put it that way. And then she's building a fashion brand. She's traveling between New York and LA. And she's basically now a Gemini with that pixie crop. She is operating behind the scenes. And she basically goes through a really long period where she's hidden. Like she's working. We know her. She's notorious. She's a massive celebrity in America. And like she's got all these powerful friends. Um, but yeah, she's hidden from view, I would say. And then just to bring it back to her progressed full moon in Sagittarius. Now, I noted what she was doing around this time. It was really recent. Let's just, oh, we've got pretty much the exact time there. It was Halloween, and she posted a picture of her and David on Halloween, very coupley, which is so appropriate for a full moon moment in one's progressed chart. 1404, just for those astrology enthusiasts that want to sort of do their own little bit of research as well, maybe. 1404. I know, 1354. Here we are. It's literally November 1st, 2022 is her progressed full moon in Sagittarius. Now, even though this is a full moon in her sixth house, I do feel like, yeah, it's really appropriate. She was celebrating her relationship with David. I think that's really, really nice. If we consider that this is a progressed Leo, ascendant, which my mentor told me there's no such thing as a progressed ascendant because of the way that progressions are calculated. You would tend to ignore the progressed ascendant. But if we were to think that there was such a thing as a progressed ascendant, she would have a progressed ascendant in Leo with that full moon moment in her fifth house with the moon and sun trining and sextiling. Kind of lovely and beautiful and nice. However, we also have to consider the fact that old Vicky B, Victoria Beckham, has had Pluto squaring her sun. Now, I can tell you off the cuff, I don't even need to look at notes. I'm just going to tell you with a little bit of a face to camera. Victoria's Pluto square Chiron and the sun has been all about her daughter-in-law. I'm not going to go into detail. I'm not going to pull up any charts for that. I'm just going to say, like, that has been the issue of that, you know? Anyway, let's now move on to have a look at Victoria Beckham's children. So we've already, and I'm going to wrap it up here because I don't think anyone wants to hear me going on much longer. I can do a part two. This is just like this has just been like a little taster of a celebrity birth chart, but it's been interesting, hasn't it, guys? Like, look, I'm not knowledgeable about Victoria Beckham in every which way. Like, I only know her as posh, wag, probably know her better than some people, and maybe not as obsessively as some of my other heroes. So watch this space. Like look, I love celebrity culture, but I'm not reading every copy of Hello OK magazine. I've also lived in Hong Kong for the last 11 years, Tokyo in the last year, and Hong Kong for the last 11 years before that. So I've been away from the UK for well over a decade. So I haven't exactly been keeping up with popular culture. But she's a legend. She is the myth, the legend, Victoria Beckham. Okay, on to the children. Now, this is a screen grab of the kids, and I just wanted to point out some of their synastry because this is so lovely, and we can also see where through memory. You're going to have to use your memory now, guys, or pull up Victoria's chart yourself. But basically, I know it from memory because I'm obviously an astrologer pays attention. Look, we've got Brooklyn, Romeo, both are born with Libra rising. This occupies Victoria's fourth house of family, right? So she's really creating a family by having these children. Cruz has his Jupiter in her fourth house, and little Harper has her Saturn in her fourth house. So the air energy is very family familiar to Victoria. It's occupying though that fourth house for her. Note too, the Uranus connections because Victoria has Moon in Aquarius trine Uranus. Let's see if I can spot which which of the children has the Moon Uranus connection. Anyway, Harper is a Cancer with her sun right on Victoria's in her first house, and it's right on Cruz's moon. So these guys, the two youngest, Harper and Cruz, are both probably, look, I think Romeo looks a lot like, I think all the kids look like all their parents, but Harper and Cruz are perhaps the ones that Victoria identifies with more. I don't know. Then you've got Harper's Mars in the same sign as Victoria's. So they're like Harper and Victoria, they've got some really interesting synergy going on there, some synastry between them. You've also got Romeo's Saturn on Victoria's, Saturn with the moon and the North Node. So we know when Romeo was born, she was going through this real time of isolation, right? And Romeo was the baby that was born when, oh no, it was Cruz was born after the affair. Romeo was born at the end of the Spice Girls. So this time when she was going through her Saturn return, kind of like a mini crisis, was the time when Romeo was born. And yet he's like the middle boy. I feel like, Brooklyn's the one that's really been a pain in the ass, hasn't he, lately? Like Brooklyn's really, messed things up with this new partner of his. And I don't know anything about nothing, but like that's my hot take. I mean, I don't know. But people and the celestial fingerprint they have on us, the blueprint that we share, and how we they can cosmically remind us of a time. And so Romeo could be a little bit of a reminder of that time when Victoria was coming of age. She'd already had Brooklyn. She's having a second child. She doesn't quite know what she's doing, where she's at. Anyway, also let's look at Brooklyn. He's a Pisces, so he also has Venus, Jupiter, Mercury in Aries. So Brooklyn might feel a lot like her, right? It might be like looking in a mirror when she's looking at Brooklyn because they have really similar natures. Also, all of them have a very strong Aquarian signature. You've got the Brooklyn has Venus, Uranus sextile. Oh, his moon, that's it. Brooklyn has moon in Libra, trine, Uranus in Aquarius. So exactly the same as Victoria, right? The moon, Uranus trine in air. Okay. And then they all have that, they all have a strong Aquarian signature. Cruz has his Venus on Brooklyn's South Node. So there's a karmic connection between them. There's some Pisces going on. Cruz has got his sun, Uranus, Mercury in Pisces. So it's also interesting to think about when things are being filmed as well. Like there's obviously transits to these kids' charts right now and so on. So I kind of like looked at each one of them individually. Anyway, what else do we want to say? I think Romeo's so sweet because he has this Venus rising in Libra with Mercury in Libra. So he's a very handsome, good looking, I wouldn't say handsome, I'd say he's a very good looking young man is Romeo. He has Mars and Sun in the 12th house in Virgo, which is super interesting. I'd be very interested to see what he does. Anyway, what else about these kids? Did I see anything else? Harper's got her moon in Sag, which I like. Moon in Sagittarius for Harper. And yeah, I'm going to shut up about that now. Just a lot of air, a lot of Cancer, a lot of Aquarius energy. So I think I've gone on quite a while now. I'm going to wrap this up because I think it's excessive to go and go and go. No one's got time for that, have they? Unless you're a fan of Victoria and the Spice Girls. Should I do all the Spice Girls? Should I do Kim Kardashian next? How about it? Let's go for it. I love astrology. If you love astrology, but you really want somebody else to do all the heavy lifting, call me. I'm your girl. I will delineate your birth chart. I will look at your progressions. We can chat. Call me. Or email me for email me for your personal birth chart reading, or stay tuned, subscribe and follow because I will be doing more celebrities. So if that's your bag, baby, let's go.